Hi, you guys. Happy Wednesday, I think. Sorry if I'm a minute late. I live next to a fire station, so there were a bunch of sirens going off right before I was getting ready to log on. So we have been talking for the last week and a half about conditioning, and we've been looking at how we get conditioned and how sometimes our conditioning can take us away from our authentic self-expression, and how when we are conditioned or living from our conditioning, sometimes it keeps us stuck and blocked. And when we look at the root archetypes underneath our conditioning that can really help us enhance living out the fullest expression of who we are, we can see where sometimes our self-sabotage patterns live. We can see where sometimes there are places that hold us back. So yesterday I talked about how if I take the human design chart and I put it in a big blender and I blend it up, and I blend up all the archetypes in the chart, the archetypes of type, the archetypes of centers, the archetypes of the lines of the profiles, the archetypes of the themes of the circuits and the channels and the gates, what we would have underneath the entire chart would be 9 core archetypes that need to be functioning at a high level in order for you to be expressing your highest potential. So yesterday I unpacked a little bit about the resiliency key, which is, I call those 9 core archetypes the resiliency keys, the resiliency key of courage, and how sometimes when we don't know how to tap into our courage, the fear that comes as a result of that keeps us stuck and blocked. It keeps us trapped in paralyzing patterns that prevent us from moving forward, prevent us sometimes from getting out of our comfort zone and growing into the bigger, more full expression of the truth of who we are. So the place where courage lives primarily, and it shows up in a lot of different places in the chart, including in the emotional solar plexus and including in the will center, but the place that we oftentimes really experience the artifacts of the shadow of courage is in the spleen center. So the spleen center, as we talked about yesterday, is the center for intuition and instinct. It is a center that right now, at this time on the planet, for all of us as human beings, is under tremendous evolutionary pressure. We are learning how to tap into fear and emotional resonant frequencies as the source of our creative power, instead of pushing against fear as a motivator. So this whole part, this whole splenic center, this instinct and intuition always has a function, always has a place. And if you want to learn more about it, do go watch the video that I posted yesterday. And it also is teaching us how to push through fear and how to know how to leverage fear so that we don't get trapped and stuck in it. So yesterday we looked a little bit at the gate 48 and how the gate of wisdom, the gate 48, can sometimes keep us stuck in analysis paralysis and keep us trapped in the idea that there's always something else we have to do to be ready. There isn't. Today I want to explore for you the gate 57. The gate 57 comes off the top inside of the spleen center, and that gate 57 is an energy that is literally the most psychic gate in the chart. There is knowingness that happens in this gate 47, and people who have this energy defined get instant downloads. They know stuff. They don't always know how they know that they know, but they know. And so if you have this gate defined in your chart, you might find that you have a lot of knowingness, a lot of awareness, a lot of psychic, intuitive insights, if you will, about things, and you don't know how you know these things. They just drop into your awareness. That is the power and the beauty of this 57 energy. The highest function of this gate 57 is for us to have a deep sense of inner awareness that allows us to prepare so that when the timing is right, we know what we need to do to take action. Because this 57 is so insightful and aware of what's next and what next right step perhaps needs to be taken, this 57 can sometimes have at its heart, in its shadow, a fear of the future. And oftentimes what we'll see is we have people who have this gate defined who know what's next. And the fear of the possibility of the shadow side of what's next can keep them stuck or blocked. There's also another really interesting conundrum with this energy. So We live in a society, and again, this is part of the evolutionary pressure of what's happening in the splenic center. We live in a society that really thinks, and I say thinks that it values reasoning, logic. It values what we call scientific data, which isn't actually completely valid because we don't actually get access to a lot of real scientific data. Scientific data itself and the way it's transmitted is heavily regulated by academia and heavily regulated by people who fund scientific data. So yes, there's a lot of really good scientific data out there, and I'm not saying don't believe in science, but I'm saying there's a lot of data that doesn't get transmitted fully because of some of the underlying issues associated with science. That's my little opinion blurb here. And we are in love with reasoning. We are in love with logic. Every institution that we have in our country, in America, every institution by definition is an institution that's built on the patterns of logic and reasoning. We educate children by virtue of the patterns of logic and reasoning. We have a very left brain dominant way of teaching children that involves duplicating and repeating patterns and having homework and doing something over and over again, because people who are logical by definition need patterns and consistency and practice and rhythm to become masterful. Everybody needs that to a certain degree, but that's not the only way we know things. In human design, what we see is there are 3 different ways of knowing. There's logical, linear, patterned understanding, left brain knowingness, understanding, not really knowingness. There's the right brain way of knowing that is very sensual and feeling based. So there are a lot of people who feel information. They feel whether things are right for them or not. That's rooted in the sensing circuit. There's a third way of knowing that we really don't get. We don't even talk about it that much. And that third way of knowing is literally knowingness. That's knowing stuff. And you don't know how you know that you know. It's deep, purely instinctual awareness that is in the moment, that is, I know this thing to be true. It is inarguable. You can't argue with it. You can't reason with it. And the challenge with people who have knowingness as part of their design or part of their claircognizance, part of the way in which they understand and interpret intuition and instinct in the world, is that if you have any kind of logic in your chart in conjunction with knowingness, then it's very common for you to doubt yourself. If you can't prove why you know what you know or how you know what you know, then the tendency is to discount it, even though it's actually quite a valid way of knowing. In fact, if you go back and you interview scientists, 93% of scientists report that at any point in time in their scientific queries, they have experienced some kind of innate knowingness, and then they have to go back and scramble and find the science to prove it. If you have knowingness as your awareness, it means you're designed to know. And I really want to encourage you to not doubt your knowingness. You may not know how you know, but it doesn't mean it's any less valid. It doesn't mean that it's any less right. It's just a different way of knowing. It's just a way of knowing, though, that we don't really value very much in our Western culture, and we don't value very much in our materialistic consciousness. This understanding, this way of knowing is changing. And we're moving into a new way of looking at how we know things. And we're getting more and more comfortable with knowing that we know because we know. And we don't have to prove that we know. We just have to follow our own knowingness. And that really is the challenge, if you will, the task of the Gate 57. The Gate 57 has, as part of its lesson, if you will, part of its soul curriculum, it has the task of learning how to trust its knowingness and learning how to organize itself around its knowingness, so that if you have the Gate 57 defined and you know something, you start taking the next right step. You prepare and you get ready, and you don't be afraid about the future, but you trust that you'll know what you need to know when you need to know it, which is exactly the same message that I gave you yesterday for the Gate 48. There's a lot of learning to trust that you are dialed in at a level that will give you the next right bit of information that you need. And you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to freak out about it. You don't have to worry about it. You just have to practice trusting. And I say practice trusting because sometimes you have to have enough experience of trusting to know that you can trust it. So trust that you'll know what you need to know when you need to know it. And certainly I would say for those of you who have a lot of logic or need for logic in trusting yourself, start keeping a log. Start keeping track of all the things that you know, all those knowing awarenesses that you've had, and notice how frequently that feeling, that dropping in of that knowingness, notice how often it's right. And keep a record of it for yourself, so that when the self-doubt kicks in, or when you start to hold yourself back because you're afraid, or you think, oh, I don't know what to do next, take a breath and trust that you'll know what you need to know when you need to know it. And you have the data, the pattern, the written pattern to prove that when you have these certain feelings, you can trust them and that you're going to be okay. Ultimately, we are designed to have the instincts that let us know what the next right step is. Our job is to learn to trust ourselves and our instincts, and to move through whatever fears that we have with courage. Remember, I talked about this yesterday too, that the fear of the spleen, particularly if you're getting an instinctual pulse that isn't about survival, you're not being chased by a bear, but if you're instead being afraid to do something like write a book, or get on stage, or ask for a raise, or up-level yourself in any way, those are not life or death fears. They feel like it sometimes, but they're not. These are existential fears. And those existential fears, once you push through them, they dissipate. And once they dissipate, then you can get back to experiencing the full potential, the full expansion of the potential of the true story of who you are. I will not be here tomorrow. It is a Jewish holiday tomorrow, Yom Kippur, so my whole team and everybody will be quiet and off for the day, Thursday. On Friday, I will be back, and on Friday, I'm going to be talking about the Gate 44 and how sometimes the Gate 44 can hold us back and keep us trapped in fear, and how you can tap into the courage to move through the fear-based messages of the existential angst of the 44. Have a great afternoon. Be well. Talk to you later.